Great. Hello, everybody. I would once again like to introduce everybody. First of all, we have Krishnan from Novartis, and then we have Jacob from Novo Nordisk, and last but definitely not least, we have Steen from the Innovationsfonden of Denmark. Let us begin by looking at what questions we have. So first of all, this might be the elephant in the room. How has the coronavirus impacted the entire field of stem and cell therapies?
It hasn't. Not for us, at least.
I'll say that for us, it actually had a great impact because we have a lot of funding out there, and several of the groups have not been able to get in contact with patients as regularly as they wanted. So time-wise, everything has been kind of delayed. And that's a problem if you have a funding agency that gives money on precise timelines. So,
has it perhaps made the process of developing new therapies a lot faster, or are people now more focused on developing some type of treatment within the field?
No, there have actually been shortage of raw materials because in some countries where you source the raw materials from, then they have not been able to provide. But in general, we have, as you know, had a very easy going compared to many other countries in terms of lockdowns, and critical functions have been able to maintain. But I'm sure Krishnan, who's doing more clinical trials than we are, that has probably been more challenging. But maybe you are on now, Krishnan, so you can comment.
Yeah, I can talk. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, so absolutely. So wherever we need staff to be at the workplace, there is some impact. I think last year we were operating in some cases when people were asked to stay at home at 70% capacity in some plants, in manufacturing plants where we need people to be there. Same thing in clinical trials. If we have to do monitoring at the site, some of those are prohibited by local regulations. So it makes it a bit more difficult to do the same work. And very process and regulation driven industry, there will be multiple deviations to these established processes of trial monitoring or production. So that, I think now we've understood this better and we are able to tackle it. But last year there was an acute pressure on the industry.
Thank you. Steen, would you perhaps like to give your input on the topic?
I think it generally, as I said, that a lot of things has actually been lagging behind because there has been the issue, as I said, regarding a meeting with patients, and actually the hospitals has been doing a lot of different work. So a lot of things has been actually delayed. So an issue, at least seen from our point of view, is that if you have, for example, hired people that should do specific tasks and then they can't do it, you cannot ask them to wait for a half year and come back later. It doesn't work like that. So it's really sometimes a little bit tricky if you cannot, put people to do different tasks that make use. So I think it's a problem.
Thank you. We have another question from the audience that asks, what is the range of diseases that stem cell-based therapies and CRISPR-based technologies can aim to target in the next decade? So we should perhaps start with Krishnan, if that would be possible.
Yeah, I think the most easy or the low-hanging fruits are monogenic diseases, where you have a single gene dysfunction and you know that there is either a mutation, and these are very rare diseases usually, especially if we know that there is a good survival, but then there is a poor quality of life, then you are able to, if you understand the disease pathway and the cells of interest, especially in neurological conditions where the nervous system doesn't regenerate often, you can then target those with gene therapy or cell therapies directly. And the more complex diseases that involve multiple pathways, multiple genes, more difficult to intervene with those.
And Jacob?
Yeah, I think that for cell therapies, that I wouldn't say it's easier, but it's more feasible, at least from a theoretical point of view, that you can, for example, a disease like chronic heart failure, which is a very complex disease with many pathologies associated with it, you can actually treat that with the pluripotent stem cell derived cardiomyocytes. And the same with type 1 diabetes. The same with diseases as stroke, which also have many pathological features that you don't need to know to treat the disease, because you're basically preventing the damages that happen following a stroke. And there are many, many other examples. So for stem cells, they are a little bit, compared to gene therapy, a little bit out of the monogenic field.
I really think that one of the important things seen from our point of view is to set up the technology so it might work generally, meaning that for a lot of entrepreneurs, they could have a really good idea, and then if the science is okay, not always the actually project execution and the other setup really works. So I think it's needed to have some kind of a framework that could be working for all the new brilliant ideas that are emerging, meaning that people really need help to pursue their ideas. Yeah, Jakob?
Yeah, I think, Sten, I couldn't agree more with you, and I guess that's why you have companies like Novartis and Novo Nordisk that can actually help up with the more expensive manufacturing setup, because then we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars and processes that academia or early biotech simply is not capable of handling. But that's why we do everything in collaboration, because as you just said, Sten, we want to facilitate that the good ideas that takes place in biotech or academia, that we can help translate that into real products to the benefit of patients.
Thank you. I think we have another question, and this might be more of an ethical question. So it reads, by introducing ex vivo RNA or DNA or cells even into the patient, some might argue that we are manipulating biology. And this has also been seen with the current mRNA vaccines that have a lot of public education that's necessary for people to trust the technology. What is your take on this?
I think it's really important that we take it gradually, meaning that we need really, just as when we introduced the gene, molecular biology products a number of years ago, it was a real slow process, because we needed to have kind of the society's kind of opinions aligned, but I guess that the COVID actually situation has made people more ready to accept it, at least in Denmark and more highly educated countries, but I guess that we also have other countries where the ideas are not that easy kind of grabbed. So I think it's really a question that needs to be addressed politically.
On the topic of, of course.
Sorry, just to add to what Steen said, I completely agree. You have to pace yourself in how these technologies are rolled out, and you have to do step-by-step scale-ups in the size of the trials that we do to understand the safety. I mean, what we are essentially doing are irreversible processes. If you are manipulating with, say, expressing a new protein, you can't take that back. But there is enough knowledge today that when we do these introductions, we're not looking at, these are not transmitted to either children or through others, right? It's still in the individual, but we still need to put enough safeguards to understand this well, so that we can experiment and approve and regulate these new treatments.
And I can also say, in terms of the ethical issues, that as Steen said, we are on a learning journey, all of us. The companies, how do we educate the public? And you can say COVID-19 gave us a crash course, because basically I think most people, maybe not so much whether they like gene therapy or not, but more if they're anti-vaxxers, don't like to be vaccinated, will deselect the vaccines. I don't think there are that many people that will deselect the vaccines because they're mRNA vaccines. And then I think if you look back in history, when companies or others provide treatments for serious diseases, then most of the time people will adapt. A good example is, even the Pope has supported COVID-19 vaccines, because some of the vaccines are produced from cells derived from fetuses, which was a completely no-go from the Vatican. But even he sees now that this is necessary. And another example is IVF clinics. The first IVF child was made more than some decades ago everybody thought it was Frankenstein's monster, it was horrible. This is standard of care even in the most Catholic countries. So I think as we provide treatments for horrible, serious chronic diseases, I think we need to engage in a dialogue, but I think society will be adapting because people are suffering.
Maybe one more addition to what Jacob you were saying. What is really important is the tools for doing these today are very easily available, readily available. So any lab scientist, a lot of people in the audience today who are going through advanced degrees know how to do RT-PCR to play with the genome. So you could do your own test today for a coronavirus if you wanted in your own lab. It's quite simple to do it. So a lot of us need to educate ourselves on the ethics. So we know when we play with this, that we take appropriate steps to safeguard ourselves and people around us and humanity. So it's really important that we educate ourselves, and this is really one of the purposes of doing these kind of discussions with people in life sciences to know the hazards of playing with technology.
Thank you very much. When we're now talking about diseases that can be treated by these new cell and like RNA, DNA therapies, what are your thoughts on diseases or conditions which cannot be treated with these sort of chemical medicines right now, such as like heart ailments or schizophrenia, perhaps? Would you like to start,
Will
Jacob?
you go first? Yeah, I can also start. I think that we actually just looked a little bit into schizophrenia with cell therapies, and also diseases like epilepsy can potentially also be treated with cell therapies, and maybe also with gene therapies. As I simply don't know enough about. I think many of these diseases are not monogenic, but have other pathologies. But I think that we will see in the future, and this is not tomorrow, that even diseases like schizophrenia may be able to be treated with stem cell derived products.
Yeah,
but it will take some time.
To add to it, yeah, these are complex diseases. They're not the pharmacology is not clean, where you manipulate a certain enzyme or a receptor and you can change the course of the disease. Schizophrenia is very complex. Heart diseases involves multiple pathways: circulatory system, heart muscle, the nervous system, and how it interplays with the muscular system. So I think when it comes to these complex, and that's why we have also a lot of polytherapy in people with heart disease. You have something to treat the hypertension, something to treat the blood chemistry like lipids, to treat the glucose. Those are more hard to go back to because there is no common etiological source for the disease. And so it's not possible to just turn a system on or off and change the course of the disease.
Yeah, I'll say I don't know what will come there, but I'm looking forward to seeing some applications from some brilliant persons that have some ideas, and then we could give it a shot and they could try it out to see if it works.
Yeah.
There's another question about personalized medicine. It says, what will it take to make personalized medicine, for example, based on gene therapies and cell therapies, a commonly available treatment? And what is sort of like the barrier for widespread implementation? Would you like to start, Krishnan?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think two principal barriers, and one is the technological and the manufacturing part, where these need to become more widespread use of this technology so that we can have a scalable process that we can make personalized medicine. Personalized medicine itself is a very complex word. You can have a chemical molecule that's personalized for you, which may be more easy to produce, but more difficult to develop. Or you can have a gene inserted into you, which is easy to develop, but more difficult to produce. So those are, depending on what it is, one can then see that the barrier of manufacturing and others become lower. The other part is the who's going to pay for it? What is the reimbursement system? Because that is quite complex. Our systems are all budgeted annually. So you look at what's happening this year. Can I pay for something this year? But when you have a long-term output, when you have a long-term outcome, when you're changing the course of a disease over a prolonged period, the payers and the insurance companies find it difficult to approve those therapies that may cost more. So this is a complex solution that requires a partnership with healthcare systems, pharmaceutical researchers, and individuals to find good solutions.
I'll say that in Denmark are part of international pyramid kind of groups in Europe. There's a lot of efforts in European science and trying to overcome some of these problems, and they are treated in a common European manner, or also in Scandinavia and other places. So there's a great kind of focus on that from the scientific part of the world that hopefully would emerge with some kind of solutions that can be used.
Yeah, and I think that it depends a little bit what you mean with personalized medicine. I think what Krishnan, what you're doing at Novartis with taking cells out and putting them back in, that is basically as personalized in my mind as it gets. And we can also take a skin biopsy and develop a pluripotent stem cell into whatever organ and then inject it back, and then you don't need immunosuppression. But the time and cost, and most importantly, the quality and safety, is simply not there to do it on a massive scale. You can, and I think you spoke very well about it, Krishnan, that in the oncology field, you know, people have a very high bar for side effects because people are basically going to die if they don't get the treatment. For other diseases, to use this kind of personalized medicine, I don't think we have the right technology. But I'm pretty sure that with time, technology will develop, allowing much more personalized medicine to be put on the market. We are just not right there now in terms of the larger diseases.
Fully agree.
Thank you very much. This is the very last question, and it's probably more directed towards Sten. It reads, when talking about making investments and or in applying for investment as an organization seeking to develop these therapies, what are some of the biggest issues that can arise and that can sort of prevent the organization from getting funding?
As I said during my presentations, it depends on actually how you set it up. You need a brilliant idea. You need to point out where the value are. You need to have an efficient kind of project execution, and you need an idea how to implement it. So these are really the criteria that I think we all use, not just in the Innovationsfonden Denmark, but everywhere. Of course, we cannot take kind of personal risks, meaning that we need to treat everybody equal. I guess that both Krishnan and Jakob can have, say we need to focus and support this particular science because it's important from a company's strategy. But we have to need a generalized kind of, we have to treat everybody equal. So that's so we have some general rules that we need to follow in order to fund these kind of things.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think this was all the time that we had for the panel discussion today. I will now be sharing the presentation back to.
Thank you very much, Lucien, for doing the panel.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Nice
Luchen.
work, Lucien.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice to meet you all.